Hi, I'm Susie, and this is the sewing room. Now, we call it the sewing room because during the earlier renovation times when they ripped up the wooden floors, underneath the floors, embedded in the dirt, were small sewing scissors, needles, threads, and pins. So we called it the sewing room. It was also used as guest quarters as well. Now, the Olivas made most of their own clothing, and they did this either through spinning, sewing, or weaving. They had their own sheep, so they had their own wool, and they prepared the wool to put on the spinning wheel and create their own yarn. And from the yarn, the shumash could weave beautiful blankets, rugs, and warm clothing on the loom. Now, the sewing machine came much later. And remember, they had no electricity, so this sewing machine was operated by foot on the pedal below. Now, finer clothing and material to make a beautiful dress like this was purchased or traded for by the Olivas family. And one more thing, this is the layout couch. Now, the layout couch was used in the old times when they didn't have funeral parlors. So they would take their beloved one that had just passed, dress them up in their finest clothing, lay them out, and you could pay your final respects to your family member before they were buried. And now, let's go on to the dining room. This is the dining room, and the furniture and the furnishings in this room are dated from the 1920s and belong to the last man who owned the Adobe, Max Fleischmann. Fleischmann of Fleischmann yeast and margarine. He used this property as a hunting lodge. You notice the duck decoys and the original painting of his hunting dog, Goldie. Max entertained and dined many famous entertainment and political people in this dining room. Note that picture of his yacht. When Max died in 1951, the property was passed to the Fleischmann Foundation, from which it was later gifted to the city of Ventura. We like to keep this room as a memorial to Mr. Fleischmann for saving the Adobe for us. Thank you, Max. Welcome to La Sala, or the living room. Now, this is the room where the Olivas family would entertain themselves. Now, you remember, there were no gaming devices, cell phones, or cable TV, but they could still entertain themselves by playing the piano, or perhaps a guitar. The children could play instruments and sing songs. Over here is the barrel piano, purchased by Raimundo for his family from a sea captain in the 1870s. The mechanisms inside this box strike the strings and it sounds just like a piano. There are 8 songs recorded on this music box. Family members might circle around this little table here and play a game of cards, or look at a family album. So there was plenty to do here in this room to entertain them. Now, let's go on to La Cocina, or the kitchen. Welcome to La Cocina, or the kitchen. Now, this was a beehive of activity, for this is where all the food preparation took place. Now remember, there was no running water, refrigeration, or electricity. So all the food that had to be prepared was either eaten right away or it had to be stored. So the food, the meat, and the vegetables were all chopped up and then taken out on the open fire pit for the meal that day. Often they had to bake bread because Theodora preferred bread with her meals over tortillas. So they used an horno, an outdoor oven, to bake the bread. So the food that needed to be stored for later use was either salt cured, like the meat, which would have been hung right here in the kitchen, or some of the vegetables were dried and could be hung. Some of the fruits and the other foods were jarred and covered and put in this pie safe. They had no refrigeration at that time, so they stored foods in their pie safe. You'll notice the front of this is made of tin and has small holes. The small holes allow the air to flow in and around inside, keeping the foods fresh. It also kept the bugs out. Now over here you can see a little swing. This is a replica of the actual swing that was in this kitchen. And with all those small children running around while they were preparing food, this was perfect to keep the smaller ones out of the way. And over here, we have a metal tub. This is where the entire Olivas family did their bathing. Now remember, there was no running water, and the only way to fill the tub would be from a water source outside, and it had to be carried in. So that meant the entire family would have most likely used the same water. And you would bet that the parents were bathing first before everyone else. That concludes our downstairs tour. Now let's go upstairs.